Hello friends, I am Dr. Kuldeep Mohadikar. In this video, I will be presenting my 16th chapter from my series Literary Pearls. The chapter is entitled as The Deserted Village by Oliver Goldsmith. The Deserted Village was first published in 1770. It took 2 years for its completion. He got the idea of writing the poem from an important event. General Napier bought up the estate on which stood the village of Lissoy, which is idealized as Auburn in the poem, in Ireland with a view to extending his private grounds. This place was close to the birthplace of Oliver Goldsmith. His father held the living of Kilkenny West, about 6 miles from Lissoy, and his brother Henry was curate of Lissoy for some time. All this occurred when Goldsmith was just a boy. General Napier, after purchasing the estate, served notices on the inhabitants for ejectments. Consequently, the tenants were turned out of their farms. The poem describes the scenes both in and about Lissoy, things familiar to him from his boyhood days. The poet writes that wealth and luxury sap the internal strength of the country. They force a large scale migration from the rural to the urban places. The poem teaches us to rely more upon the natural resources of one's own country than on foreign trade. I quote, "Teach him that states of native strength possess, thou very poor, may still be very blessed. The trade's proud empire hastes to swift decay, and ocean sweeps the labored mole away." Dependence on foreign trade makes people avaricious and luxurious. The poet's chief aim is to present a contrast between agriculture and commerce, maintaining that the former is most worthy pursuit both as regards individual happiness as well as national prosperity. When the nation depends on its own resources, it is as strong as a rock. I quote, "While self-dependent power can time defy, as rocks resist the billows and the sky." The poem consists of two elements, that is, descriptions of the past prosperity and present desolation of the village, and reflections on the rural bliss and evils of luxury and town life. The poet describes the pleasure of rural life as something far superior to pompous festivities of the luxurious. Therefore, a country deprived of its sturdy peasantry, although growing richer, bigger, and more magnificent, it is on the high road to ruin. Not only do tirades against luxury and sweet and touching descriptions abound in the poem, but they also furnish an occasion for each other. The poet displays his art of descriptive and didactic poetry alternately and in due proportion. The fault lies not in his tirades against luxury and trade, but in his fallacy in identifying trade and luxury. It is wrong to speak of trade's unfilling train, because trade multiplies and widens fields of labor and thereby creates large towns as well as large populations. Now, large towns do include great and wide miseries, but such miseries have been over described. All the same, the great commercial prosperity of the time was not the cause of depopulation. Again, while the picture of the emigrants in their new homes is exaggerated, nothing is said of the happier side of their prospects. Whatever may be the shortcomings of the poet, his views were upheld by a very large majority of his contemporaries. Even Dr. Johnson agreed with his opinion. The Deserted Village is a lovely poem, but it suffers from certain defects which fall under the following heads. The charge of inconsistency brought against it by Machiavelli by exhibiting a copied from real life combinations of things which never were and never could be found together, by describing a theory that wealth and luxury degenerate and depopulate a country. Its theory is defective. It rarely happens that the village of such peace and plenty like Auburn should be depopulated to add to a great man's estate. He believed that England was rapidly depopulating during his time on account of the growth of wealth and commerce, but he is entirely wrong in his opinion. The picture of the emigrants is an exaggeration, for he sees the tears and agonies of their leave taking and sees nothing of the hope and confidence that lie beneath these distresses. However severe and temporarily overwhelming, he does not know the good side of the exile's prospects. He imagines only swamps, jungles, whirlwinds, and sunstrokes and streaks and shrieks and despair. Goldsmith creates interest for the reader in Auburn, thus, their interest in the poem is marred. This shows the poet's want of perception and imaginative approach by the criticism that the deserted village is made up of the incongruous parts. Macaulay means the village, as described by Goldsmith, is an unnatural combination of happy English village and a decayed Irish village. That is clear defect of the poem, and that proves the charge of incongruity. Then we can say, after seeing the defects, we will concentrate on what are the merits of the deserted village. A critic remarks, Goldsmith's The Deserted Village abounds with couplets and single lines, so simply beautiful in point of sentiment, so musical in cadence, so perfect in expression that the ear is delighted to retain them for their melody. The mind treasures them for their truth, while their tone of tender melancholy and touching pathos indelibly engraves themselves on the heart. His delineation of rural scenery, his village portraits, his moral, political, and classical allusion, while all marked by singular fidelity, chasteness, and elegance, are all distinguished for their natural and pleasing character. The finishing is exquisitely delicate without being overwrought, and with the feeling of tenderness and melancholy which runs throughout the poem. There is occasionally mixed up slight tinge of peasantry which gives an additional interest to the whole. The beauty of the poem lies not in theories and theorizing, but in its chaste implicity and sincere human sympathy. No reader of taste, said Richardson, can ever be insensible to its quiet humor, its unaffected grace, its gentle pathos and humorous versification. The tender touches of personal feeling which he has interwoven with his description, such as the fond hope with which he had dwelt on the project of returning to pass his life in the quiet and seclusion of the sweet, pretty village, the comparison of himself to a hare returning to die where it was pursued, are all surprising in the beauty while when the occasion demands. Goldsmith, with easy wing, rises to a sublime height, as in his image of the sunshine crowned through a storm-girdled peak, to which he compares the village pastor. According to Mr. Black, the chief merits of the poems are: it is clear bird singing, but there is pathetic note in it. Everything is eminently realistic. The characters are simple and natural. The pathetic side of emigration is presented most powerfully. Though written long before the time of Wordsworth, it contains lines of Wordsworthian beauty and simplicity. Sweet as the primrose peeps beneath the thorn, where wild Altama murmurs to their woe. It is free from foreign tricks or graces. In English, there is nothing more thoroughly English than the writing of this Irish man. What was the Goldsmith's theory? That wealth and luxury degenerate men and depopulate and ruin a country. Goldsmith enunciates the theory of wealth and luxury leading to man's ruin in the deserted village, but it is partly true and partly untrue. It is correct that the wealth and luxury partly demoralize the people and sap the internal strength of a state, and the nation cannot be really great if it is steeped in luxury. Wealth and luxury bring many evils in their train, but they do not necessarily bring about depopulation. It may be that here and there some tenants are ousted from their dwellings to make room for their landlord's pleasure grounds, but depopulation is a more serious matter, which generally follows in the wake of war, natural convulsions such as earthquake, flood, drought, fatal diseases such as plague, cholera, etc. On the other hand, wealth has its good side also. People earn their livelihood and support their families. Only a few people are demoralized by the wealth. In modern times, no individual or nation can progress without wealth and trade. The theory that wealth and luxury demoralize the whole mass of people is incorrect. All these exaggerations owe their origin to Goldsmith's kind and sympathetic nature. On the whole, prosperity or adversity of a nation is quite independent of wealth or luxury, poverty or want of luxury. One historical event proves that Goldsmith was wrong in his theory of depopulation. For in the year 1770, the year in which the deserted village was published, the population of England and the Wales was estimated to be 7 millions and a half, while in the year 1760 it was only 5 millions and a half. What is then the moral of the poem? The poem simply teaches what are called rural virtues: a simple natural life, contented labor, hospitality, piety, steady loyalty, and faithful love. Last of all, it teaches us to depend on the natural resources of our country and not upon foreign trade, commerce, manufacturers, etc. The moral of the poem is thus briefly described in the following lines. I quote: Teach erring man to spurn the rage of gain, teach him that states of native strength possessed, though very poor, may still be very blessed. The trade's proud empire hastes to sweep decay, and ocean sweeps the labored mole away, while self-dependent power can time defy, as rocks resist the billows and the sky. I unquote. Commerce begets wealth, wealth begets luxury, luxury decimates the rural population and saps the internal strength of a kingdom. All these doctrines are expressed by Goldsmith in the poem. The greatness conferred on a country by commerce is artificial and evanescent. Rural virtues only provide permanent prosperity and bliss, according to the Goldsmith. Poverty does not hinder happiness as it depends on native strength. Towns are the hotbeds of vice as they are today. All virtues are to be found in the country. The growth or decay of the aristocracy of a country matters little, but the place of a bold race of peasants, the chief source of their country's pride, if once destroyed, can never be filled up. So this what Goldsmith felt in the deserted village. The reviews or views of Goldsmith on wealth are: commerce begets wealth, wealth begets luxury, hence wealth corrupts men, decimates rural population and saps the internal strength of the country, resulting in its final overthrow. Once, the other hand, wealthy men are a burden of the resources of a country, for they take up the land possessed by tenants to make room for rich men's mansions and parks. On luxury. Luxury is the result of wealth, the cause of moral decay, for it saps the vigor of nations and prepares the way to their fall. While making them look outwardly prosperous and great, it carries with it seeds or germs which eat into the vitals of the nation. The apparent growth and prosperity brought about by luxury is like the corpulence of the drunkard, morbid and exuberant. The so-called prosperity is but a precursor of its decline. Italy furnishes a very good example of it. On peasantry. Peasants are the true representatives of the prosperity of a nation. They are the models of hard but contented labor, hospitality, piety, etc. The growth or decay of the aristocracy of a country matters very little. Lords like princes can be made and unmade. I quote, a breath can make them as a breath has made. I unquote. On trade, trade makes men unfeeling and callous. It is the source of wealth and materially injures the cultivation of lands by ousting peasants out of their tenancy and thus dispossessing the poor cultivators of their homesteads and depriving them of their means of livelihood. Thus, in the opinion of Goldsmith, it is commerce which is the primary cause of the fall and decline of empires. Of course, this view of poetry is based upon historical facts, for Italy and other ancient kingdoms afford examples to support the poet's opinion in respect of commerce. Some feel that Goldsmith has failed in his aim, as England has been thriving owing to her extensive commerce. This fact explores the theory of Goldsmith. This can be expressed in a few words. I quote, increase of wealth unprecedented, but no increase of useful products. I unquote. In the opinion of Goldsmith, the land should be partitioned among the cultivators, each man owning a small plot owning a small plot of land. Every road or ground must maintain its value. This sort of division is the source of competence, innocence, health, the highest of all the temporal blessings. Moreover, when on one whole state is usurped by a man, it becomes quite unmanageable. Cultivation is thus neglected. The cultivators are turned out of their farms to make rooms for rich men's pleasures. Thus, rural virtues give way before the evils of luxury begot by wealth. The blessings of retirement are many. It is congenial to old age. It makes man happy who, after spending his youth in industry, finishes the last days of his life in the midst of rural bliss. It makes a man free from evil temptations which this world is beset with. It makes the way to death calm and smooth. What is the contrast? A man in retirement passes a little part of his life in ease and comfort, far away from the evil temptations of the world. Whereas the life of a luxurious rich man is beset with cares and anxieties that eat into the very vitality of his life. A retired man in such a rural seclusion is not in need of superfluous wealth, whereas the luxurious man always hankers after wealth. Pay he creates a sort of artificial poverty for his wishes, and vanities are never satisfied. Moreover, the rich man, to satisfy his wants, makes poor men risk their lives and toil hard to supply them. The former leads a simple life and is hospitable to his fellow beings, whereas the latter, living a pomp and grandeur, is inhospitable. The former resigns everything to the will of God and is always ready to meet his death cheerfully and when breathes his last. He does it without any bodily struggle and mental agonies. The rich man, on the other hand, suffers both physical and mental agonies when death approaches him and is always fearful of what may befall him in the next world. So, what is the idea of Goldsmith? According to Goldsmith, the concept of happy or the happiness. According to Goldsmith, happiness does not consist in the pomp and splendor or in the possession of large sums of money, but in passing a life of virtuous seclusion. He is happy man who lives far away from the temptations of the world, preferring a life of simplicity and innocence, who owns no mines of gold or silver, where hundreds of poor people are doomed to hard work and suffering, who does not agree or engage porters to drive away famished beggars from his doors, who rises above the cares and joys of the world and places he hopes in heaven, who closes life quietly and peacefully without suffering the horrid pangs of death, troubling a sinner whose death is made easier by a calm submission to the will of God. So this was all about just an interpretation or analysis of Oliver Goldsmith's Deserted Village from my side. Thanks, friends.